them in the chat. First, I'd like to introduce Reverend Dr. Marjorie Lewis, the co-chair of the President's Anti-Racism Task Force, and Rachel Bedingfield, the Director of Parks and Recreation, to give a welcome from Acadia and the Town of Kentville, respectively.
Thank you, Chris. It is my pleasure as co-chair of the President's Anti-Racism Task Force to welcome everyone, our panelists, participants, and the Community Development Department, especially the students who have organized this event. The President's Anti-Racism Task Force, or PART, started to meet last fall, but built on work that was already done through a decolonization task force and work on Indigenous matters. We are excited to be part of this and to know that the town of Kentville is involved, because for Acadia, the link between town and gown is really important. We're working to mainstream anti-racism work in all aspects of Acadia's operations and to link with the community. So congratulations to the students and to the department, and I am looking forward to a wonderful conversation with the distinguished panel that we have before us. Welcome, and thank you all for coming.
Hi, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Rachel Bedingfield. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for the Town of Kentville, and I'm here to just quickly welcome folks on behalf of Town Council and the Mayor, who actually are in a council meeting at this moment. So unfortunately aren't here, but are excited to follow up and watch the recording. Kentville, if you don't know, has a long history of supporting sport and recreation. And so as our town dives deeper into our commitment to access and inclusion, it makes a lot of sense to start in the recreation and sport field. So I'm so excited to have played a very small part in pulling this panel together. I'm excited to partner with Recreation Nova Scotia and the community development class at Acadia. I'm an Acadia grad. I'm super proud of these students for all the great work they're doing. So thank you, and thanks to the panelists.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie and Rachel. Now I'm going to introduce our panelists tonight. First, we have Dean Smith. Dean, if you want to give a wave. All right, Dean's a lawyer with the Federal Department of Justice, chair of Hockey Nova Scotia's Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, and program lead with the Black Youth Ice Hockey Development Program in Halifax. Dean's also a dedicated hockey parent and coaches both of his boys' minor hockey teams with the Shabukta Minor Hockey Association. Dean's passionate about making the game of hockey more diverse, inclusive, and welcoming for everyone. He believes the game should reflect our emerging demographics, and to grow the game, we must proactively recruit participants from historically underrepresented communities. Next up, we have Sergeant Craig Marshall Smith, Member Order of Merit of the Police Force. Craig, you want to give a wave? Craig is a Halifax-based author, RCMP Sergeant, and President/Board Chair of the Black Cultural Society for Nova Scotia. Greg graduated from RCMP Academy on March 10, 1997. He has written and researched extensively on African Canadian achievement and has lectured and conducted presentations on Black Canadian history, race relations, and policing from a Black perspective across Canada and the United States since 1999. Craig is a published author of 5 books, his most recent being Her Story, Black Women Making a Difference in Canadian Law Enforcement, which was released in 2020. He's also appeared in a number of historical video documentaries, including The Long Road to Justice, The Viola Desmond Story, and Soul on Ice ESPN video on the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes. Craig has received a number of awards and in recognition of his work in the area of diversity, inclusion, and race relations. These awards include the Harry Jerome Award 2012, recipient of the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2012, and the Dr. Burnley A. Jones Nova Scotia Human Rights Award in 2014. In March 2015, Craig was appointed to the Police Order of Merit of Police Forces by His Excellency the Honorable David Johnson, Governor General of Canada. Craig is the first African Nova Scotian police officer and first RCMP member in Canada to receive his honor. Next, we have Tracy Mulder. Tracy, you want to give a wave?
I think
Okay,
we might have
Tracy.
lost her.
Oh, what's that?
I think we might have lost her. I can't find her here.
Oh, let's pretend she gave a wave. Tracy was born in Halifax and raised in the community of Lake Loon, Nova Scotia, where she currently resides. Introduced to sports at a young age by her father, she switched from softball to hockey after a serious shoulder injury. Needing another sport to fuel her love of competition, Tracy began playing ball hockey, first joining a newly formed team from Dartmouth. Tracy did not play organized hockey until her ball hockey team decided to form an ice hockey team to compete against two other local teams. She has been involved in the Nova Scotia Women's Hockey League since its formation in 1994. In addition to being a player, Tracy has been her team's league rep since '94, as well as the team manager/organizer for many years. She has even taken on the responsibility of coaching during periods where she was unable to play due to injuries. Tracy is still an avid ball hockey and ice hockey player, but has branched out into coaching and refereeing. She has coached minor female hockey, high school female hockey, as well as serving as an on-ice instructor for the Black Ice Youth Hockey Program. Tracy has also coached high school girls basketball and indoor field hockey. A certified ball hockey referee for the past 10 years, Tracy, in addition to serving as referee-in-chief for the Metro Ladies Ball Hockey League, she was the first Nova Scotian female to referee at the Canadian Ball Hockey Association, or the CBHA, Eastern Ball Hockey Championship, and CBHA National Ball Hockey Championship. A teacher by profession, Tracy is currently employed by the South Shore Regional Center for Education as the Regional Coordinator of African Canadian Education Services. And last but not least, Crystal Watson. Crystal, you want to give a wave? Thank you. Who will be our moderator, but will also offer her knowledge and insights. Crystal is the proud mother of Ritesha. She is a doctoral candidate in the PhD in Health program at Dalhousie University, where her research focuses on the lived experiences of African Nova Scotian girls in the context of outdoor play. She attended St. Mary's University for her psychology undergrad degree before heading to Dalhousie for her bachelor degree in therapeutic recreation, followed by a Master of Arts degree in leisure studies. Crystal has over 20 years in the recreation field, working in direct service delivery with individuals from various backgrounds in community and clinical settings. And as an educator, with roots in the historical Black community of East Preston, she practiced as a recreation therapist for 10 years and taught at Dalhousie as a sessional instructor, which was where she developed an interest in post-secondary education. She was the lead core faculty at the Nova Scotia Community College, teaching the Therapeutic Recreation Diploma program. She is the Executive Director for Recreation Nova Scotia, working to advance the value of recreation in the lives of all people that live in Nova Scotia. I see Tracy came back. Do you want to give a wave, Tracy? Right on. On that note, I'd like to turn things over to Crystal to begin our discussion tonight.
Thank you so much. Once again, I want to thank Acadia University and the Town of Kentville for supporting this event tonight. We don't often get that opportunity to, I guess, really have some intimate conversations when it comes to being involved in recreation and leisure and sport. And so this is I'm really excited to be able to join Craig, Dean, and Tracy tonight to talk hockey and the influence that it's had and still has within our community. So if you've had the opportunity, or if you didn't have the opportunity to watch Icebreakers, I certainly encourage you to do so. It's a very moving, short documentary, but it really speaks to how sometimes Black history is lost in Nova Scotia. And so this just provides a little glimpse into the sport world in that sport of hockey. So I'm just gonna ask the panelists a few questions and really strongly encourage all of the participants this evening to please share your questions in the chat, because I'm sure they'll all be willing to share their insights there. And Craig, I'm going to start with you. As our historian on the panel, you have some great insights into the context of Black history. And I'm really interested in hearing about your thoughts and perspectives around the Colored Hockey League and its, I guess, how central it was to the community back then.
All right. First of all, thank you, Crystal, for the invitation, and for Kentville and for Acadia as well for giving us the opportunity to come together and speak about this for a long time forgotten, overlooked, an unknown piece of Nova Scotian and Canadian history, really. I think probably to put things in the proper context, so we have to take just a little bit of a step back just to think that by, you know, in 1895, when we saw the rise of the Colored Hockey League, we would have had the migration of the Black Loyalists. We would have had the New England planters who came to the Valley starting in the 1760s from the New England states, and with them they brought over 100 enslaved African Americans with them. We would have had the 300 or so, some that were left behind, not all, but some that were left behind when the French occupied the fortress of Louisbourg in Cape Breton back between 1713 and 1758. And so to bring that forward, and then the Trelawney Maroons, of course, and the Black refugees of the War of 1812. So we put that whole backdrop in place in its proper context before looking at the Colored Hockey League. And then also recognizing the fact that our existence as Black people in the province and in the country at that time was one that was steeped in segregation and racism. And recognizing the fact that, you know, for the most part, second-class citizenship. And so out of that, we still, you know, have carved a history and a legacy, and the Colored Hockey League is part and parcel of that. So at the time of the formation of the Colored Hockey League, we wouldn't have had our first Black elected official at that time. We would have had some sports heroes, because George Dixon, of course, won his first world title in 1890. And so at that time was the most famous Black person in the world. So we had some, you know, Nova Scotia was known for having some sports heroes, but, you know, nobody really knew about a Colored Hockey League at all. And so when we see the rise of the league, or this formation of the league, Black men had already been playing and skating on the lakes and the ponds for years prior to the formation of the league. And if we look at the layout and the way in which Black communities were situated in Nova Scotia at the time, we were always on the outskirts of the major town or the major city. So whether it be Weymouth, or whether it be Weymouth outside of Digby, Greenville and Yarmouth, whether it be the Marsh or the Hill and Truro, you know, Upper Big Tracadie, we were always on the outskirts of. And of course, being on the outskirts of also situated us amongst the ponds and the lakes and all those places that froze over at that time without any problem. And so it would seem like almost a natural affinity that you were going to do something on the ice in the wintertime. And so, you know, Black men and their sons played hockey. And so, you know, they had already established the fact that they were playing hockey prior to the formation of the league, but we don't see we see them at least on documentation in 1895 having played. The formation of the league itself as an actual league itself was around 1900 or thereabout. But by that time, you already had teams in more than one team in Halifax. You had teams in Dartmouth, you had teams in Truro, Amherst. There was even a team in PEI, the West End Rangers. And so, you know, these were men for the most part, to a large degree, of the church. And the church played a central role in the formation of the league, in so much as the three gentlemen who were the pillars of the league, which would have been Henry William Sylvester, James R. Kinney, and James Robertson Johnson, were all men that were involved in the AUBA. They all served in some capacity or another, whether it be clerks, superintendents of Sunday schools. They were all involved in the African United Baptist Association, which of course we know was founded in Nova Scotia in 1854 by Reverend Richard Preston. And so it was the focal point of the communities. Reverend Preston also established 11 different churches around the province as well. And so the men of the church were the men of the hockey league. So, you know, it was just a natural affinity from one to the other, because the church was the focal point of the community. And so these men playing hockey, recognizing and realizing in a lot of cases that they were only going to get to play on the lakes and the ponds because, you know, the systemic racism that we were being faced at that time, they couldn't get into the rinks. You know, in some cases they couldn't afford to be able to rent the rink, but in the cases where they were able to, you still had to realize the fact that in a lot of cases the rinks were not going to allow Black men to play. And the times when they, you know, a few times when they did, it was always after the white leagues were over. So it was going to be a later game or a game, you know, at a time when nobody else wanted to be in the arena. And so therefore that's kind of the backdrop. And yet we see a league that revolutionized hockey. We see a league that brought in some of the a revolution to the games that are part and parcel of how we play hockey now, but back then were unheard of. Goaltenders were not allowed to go down and stop a shot in the white hockey leagues of the day. Henry Braces Franklin was probably the first goaltender of note on record that could go down and stop a shot on the ice, member of the Colored Hockey League. The slap shot was not allowed. You could do a wrist shot, but you couldn't lift your stick up again above your waist to hit the puck. Eddie Martin, who was a player in the Colored Hockey League, is the first person recorded as having lifted his stick up above his waist to hit the puck. And, you know, when you read it, to me, it's everything we see today when we see a slap shot happening in the NHL. You know, we can't really look at the players of today, and in particular those that have Nova Scotian roots, like Evander Kane and Devontae Smith-Pelly and Wayne Simmons, without first looking back to the Colored Hockey League. And so, you know, generations, my dad played hockey, my brother Mark played hockey, my grandfather played hockey. But really until George and Daryl Fossey came out with the book about Black Ice, about the Colored Hockey League, I didn't know anything about the league. Nobody kind of talked about it. I think, you know, for the most part, when it started to dissolve following the First World War and black men trying to find jobs. And of course, if you get a job on the railroad, it's not like you could keep a hockey schedule, right? It was just a reality. And some men also went to where those jobs were. So it might've been moving to Montreal, to Toronto, out to Winnipeg, if you got a job on the CNR or the CP rail. And so therefore that helped to dissolve the league. And it kind of got lost in the annals of history. Nobody really talked about it. Nobody, you know, and it wasn't until you started to see some of the older photos that you started to recognize some of the men and say, wow, these are men that I had heard of in history. These are men that I'd heard of that had made other contributions to the Black experience in the province, but never made the connection that they had anything to do with hockey. You know, for a long time, talked about we had weak ankles. You didn't see many Black people in the NHL because we couldn't skate and we had weak ankles. And yet, you know, I can show you picture after picture of members of the Colored Hockey League that had no problem skating around the rink and skating into history in that respect.
Well, it's certainly like the scope of Black hockey. You know,
Yeah.
you speak so strongly to that, and I want to jump to Dean, because now you're on the board of Hockey Nova Scotia, and you know, you how has the scope of hockey changed for the Black community through your eyes?
Yes, first of all, thank you, Crystal, for the question, and thanks to Acadia University and the Town of Kentville and Recreation Nova Scotia for the invite. I echo Craig's thank you message. Yeah, I sit as a member of the board of directors at Hockey Nova Scotia, but that was not always the case, as you know, Crystal. In 2019, as a result of some local and international incidents of racism and discrimination on the ice, Hockey Nova Scotia decided to strike a diversity and inclusion task force. That task force was called upon to address issues of racism in the game within the province. As many of you know, Hockey Nova Scotia regulates amateur hockey in the province, and therefore is tasked with addressing serious issues like this. The task force was called and is made up of a diverse group of individuals. Crystal joins me on that task force. I sit as chair, and we've been working for just over the last year on trying to come to terms with race and racism in the game and discrimination in the game. One of the challenges we were confronted with early on was that Hockey Nova Scotia, the board of director level, did not have representation that could raise these issues for discussion at the board table. And I'm not just talking African Nova Scotians involved in the game. I'm talking about Indigenous issues. I'm talking about persons with disabilities issues. I'm talking about 2S LGBTQ plus community issues. No representation at the board level. So therefore, how can it be discussed? Therefore, how can it be addressed? So when the task force came together, and it was a very good looking group of task force members, I must say, we were confronted with a very, very important issue right from the front, right from the get. And that issue was, why are we here doing this work when all we can do is make recommendations to the board of directors and hope that that list of recommendations, like many other task force, does not sit on a shelf and gather dust. So one of the first pieces of work that we did was to draft our terms of reference. That terms of reference was an inclusive, diverse set of terms of references, and it allowed us, and we made room for making recommendations in real time. In other words, we were not going to wait till the end of our mandate to submit a list of recommendations to Hockey Nova Scotia Board of Directors and then hold with bated breath whether any of those were going to be followed through on. So we put in our terms of reference that we would include recommendations in real time. Now, an example of those recommendations in real time was in the spring, we made a recommendation in real time to the board of directors to create a permanent seat at the board of director table to be representative of diversity and inclusive issues and equity issues as well. That went to the board and it passed unanimously. So I now sit in that chair position on the board of directors. We also made a recommendation to Hockey Nova Scotia that they must come out and make a clear statement on where they stand on racism and discrimination in the game. And early in 2020, Hockey Nova Scotia came out with a clear public statement that racism and discrimination has no place in this game. So that gave us the liberty to move on with our work. One of the additional recommendations we made was that the board of directors in real time should create a manifesto to direct the work that they do. And that recommendation went to the board and they did create a manifesto, and it's reviewed at the front end of every board meeting now. And that manifesto includes lines like, we will welcome everybody. We will celebrate strength from diversity, and we will encourage growth of the game through access of underrepresented communities. So those are some of the recommendations in real time. Now, the task force has been busy in other areas as well. We've been hearing from experts from across the country. We also created an innovative digital survey that we sent out across the province. That survey asked people to respond to impediments to joining the game of hockey, impediments to remaining in the game of hockey, and reasons why you left the game of hockey. We were aiming that survey at underrepresented communities for the most part, but hockey communities generally. We received over 840 responses to that survey. That data is rich. The average time to fill out the survey was 13 minutes. And if any of you have filled out a survey before, you realize how valuable 13 minutes is in writing and responding to survey questions. The survey questions were open-ended, so people were allowed to really share freely what they thought about the game and how we as a province can make the game more inclusive and welcoming for everybody. So that's sort of how we expanded the landscape at the board of directors level, and the recommendations are yet to come. We're right in the crunch of reviewing recommendations. As Crystal smiles there, I can see it's a lot of work and formulating those recommendations. So what we expect will happen in early spring is we will have a set of priority recommendations going to the board of directors, of which we expect them to act upon. And then we will have a second batch, an appendix of recommendations that we garnered from all of the recommendations from across the country. So we know there are priority issues that the board obviously has to address. One is diversity and equity training at all levels of the sport. Not just the board of directors level, although that's necessary, but through officiating, through branch organizations like minor hockey associations, front office of professional leagues. All of that has to be addressed if you're going to address racism and discrimination in the sport. So we're excited about the work. We're coming to the end of our mandate, but it's important to note, although we're coming to the end of our mandate, it's our view that that work is just beginning. So it will fall on the responsibility of the board of directors to carry on with some of that work. But we're optimistic. Obviously, the climate nowadays has an appetite to hear conversation, and we're
Mm.
taking full advantage of it.
I have to say, one of the most significant moments in the documentary for me was listening to Mr. Francis tell his lived experience. And for me, that just reiterated the importance of this diversity and inclusion task force so that we can, you know, we might not avoid all of those situations that Mr. Francis, you know, spoke to, but we can, you know, put some procedures, policies, supports in place to be able to make sure that those kinds of experiences don't have to happen. And so I'm really excited again to be working with you, Dean, and to see this work come to fruition in real time, really. Tracy, my question for you, I guess, is related to noticing just from my own work, the increased interest and emphasis on gender equity in recreation and sport. And I'm just wondering, how do you feel as a female hockey player, how have things changed, or what has been your experience as a female hockey player? And, you know, what's the future of it?
Well, first of all, I want to echo Dean and Craig by saying thank you to Acadia University, to the town of Kentville, to you, Crystal, for having me, and welcome everybody here. Thank you all for coming. But my experience, actually, I've been involved with ice hockey, organized ice hockey, actually, since 1994, the formation of the Nova Scotia Women's Hockey League. I will say that as a female, that I've actually seen it evolve. We used to get some really, really crappy ice times, I have to say. Used to get the worst possible ice times you possibly could. But I know that's probably 10 years ago that they made a push on female athletics, actually. And we as women and our league actually made a push to actually include us as women when it came to that equity access policy to female sport, when it came to ring ed and female hockey and stuff, that we put a push on, that we were included in that. And I was lucky enough actually to work recreation at the time. I was working recreation with HRM, and we had someone who was a very strong advocate for us, the booking department actually, and really fought hard to make sure that women's hockey got fair access to reasonable ice times, actually. Now 9 o'clock on a Saturday night is now considered prime, but that's the time that we had 9 o'clock Saturday night. Now I know that they've actually have 2 designated adult nights with, I know, RBC and BMO, New Stadia, I think is the name of the company that runs both rinks, but they have designated adult nights. So we have great ice times that are more conducive to the fact that a lot of women have families and they need to be home with their kids, or home at a reasonable hour to put the kids to bed, or make sure that their partner is there to sort of take care of the kids. So we have ice times that actually run from about 6:15 till about 8 or 9 o'clock at night on Thursday. I know our league is Thursday and Sunday. So those are great ice times. It's improved that way. So we have better access to some ice times, understanding that a lot of women have families. And so, and they need to be home with their families, or they want to be home with their families. The officiating actually is really where we're sort of, I think we struggle a little bit, because we get a lot of officials that are not necessarily familiar with the female game. And when I say familiar with the female game, you have to understand that the league I play in, we have 4 different levels. We have a developmental level of women. We have the B level, which is what I play in. Sort of those have been playing a while, but just too good for recreation, but not good enough for those 2 higher levels. I say that in all honesty. One of the levels, actually, we have an elite level we call it competitive, where it's former university players and those who have played high level, like midget AAA kind of thing. We have those level for that. We have those who are just a step below that, who are really pretty elite hockey players, but just too skilled for our level, for the B level, but yet not necessarily wanting to play that elite level, competitive level. So there's lots of, there's a range of skill set in women's hockey. In fact, every time I talk to someone about it, they say it's the fastest growing aspect of hockey is adult women playing hockey, which is amazing actually, because our league grows by leaps and bounds. We have, and I could be wrong about this because we've been meeting by Zoom this year, so it's pretty rough. But we have over 30 teams in our league. So it's a pretty big league, and every year we seem like we add a team. So, and it's usually in my division too, which tells you the skill set of the people that are joining hockey. Those probably ex-ringette players and those who have played on the ponds kind of thing and joined in. But the officiating, like I said, hasn't necessarily kept up with it, to be honest with you. I can tell you they have a much shorter fuse with females than they do with men, because I spend a lot of time at the rink. As a player, I like to hang around and watch games, I do. And I see the things that men say that we can never get away with as women at all. They seem to have a shorter fuse with us. And sometimes our officiating, when I say it's not up to par, they don't keep up with the play either. And sometimes we get the actual impression that they don't take it serious. I know that our league actually, again, has been working with the referees in chief, that those who do those assignments, and they are actually making sure that we get better refereeing, but that has the quality of refereeing in the past has been a problem because again, sometimes we get male referees who don't take us serious. You know, we might not be the most skilled, but you don't have to be the most skilled person to appreciate the game. And that's what, and all of us that are out there, we appreciate the game and we want to be taken seriously, even though we're not the most skilled players out there. We love the game, regardless of our skill set, our age, because we talk about the vast age difference on our own team. We have players that are in their late 50s to players that are in their early 20s on my hockey team. And that's just my team. So like I said, when it comes to that, we like to see probably more female officiating too. And again, they don't have to be elite level, high level officials like level 4 or whatever, but you know, we like to see women because we think that women understand the women's game a little better than men do. On that,
what did it take in your perspective to get more women officiating? What kind of resources need to be put in place in order for that to happen?
A lot of women actually have started off doing minor hockey, but to be honest with you, a lot of them quit because they get yelled at too much. And that's sad. I ref ball hockey, and luckily we don't actually have we don't have kids leagues around here that require my services. But I know that when I was coaching minor hockey, my problem was never the kids I coached. It was always the parents. And it was actually problematic for the kids with their parents in the stands yelling at them and taking it much more serious than the girls were out there just having fun. I say, if you're not having fun doing it, there's no point in doing it. I don't care what level you play at. If you're not having fun, there's no point in doing it. And so if you want to get more people involved, I think you have to actually kind of, people don't like to be harassed and yelled at. Give them time to learn and to grow with the level that they're refereeing at. Let them grow, right? And not be screamed at all the time. I don't think we pay people enough to be screamed at.
And one last question for you, Tracy, and then I'll stop. Do you have any idea on the statistics of Black women playing hockey?
In Nova Scotia? Wow. I can tell you, I played, like I said, since 1994. I can count on one hand the amount of Black females that I've seen playing hockey. I will tell a funny story. One time I went to a tournament in PEI and I actually broke my ankle on the first shift. So I had a lot of time on my hands. So I was at the rink and I was there and I walked and I went past on my crutches and I saw another female of African ancestry. And we stopped and we kind of looked at each other. It was like, oh my God, someone else. So it's that kind of rare where you look at each other and you're like, oh my God, you play hockey? Yeah, I play hockey. You play hockey too? Yeah, I do. Broke my ankle, but yes, we do. So like I said, maybe I may have seen 4, maybe 5.
Crystal, can I make a comment on that point?
Sure, go ahead, Dean.
Yeah, I listened intently to Tracy, and I agree with all of the commentary she had regarding the female game. I know with respect to amateur hockey, because at the board level, we're looking at the regulations as they currently exist. And what we recognized and what we're addressing is that what has happened since the rise of the female game is that what was happening is they were tweaking the regulations to fit the female game into the regulations, right? So whenever they needed to address an issue regarding the female game, they tweaked the existing recommendations, were typically male recommendations for a male game. So the good thing about it is the current regulations are completely under review as we speak. They're aiming at a set of regulations for the female game alone, which is long overdue, which is great. And the second point I wanted to make is Tracy's right, like that educational piece across all levels of hockey has to happen through officiating, like I mentioned, through minor hockey associations, because you can't just add female officials to the game if you're not going to take care of female officials in the game, right? So that training has to happen. It's mandatory. Just like every year you join minor hockey, you have to do safety and sport training. You have to do a module for this, a module for that. And I think it's long overdue.
Definitely, I agree. And again, like, having that opportunity at the diversity and inclusion task team level, being able to bring those particular issues to the forefront so that they can be addressed. I have to make sure I get Tracy and Dean's autograph because they both had a cameo in the documentary. So I'll be around with my little notebook, but I guess, if there was a message or a specific takeaway from that film that you would want people to really grasp, what would it be? I'll start with you, Tracy.
For me, being very much a minority in sport, and frankly, to be honest with you, a lot of the sports I played, like I was a softball player, ball hockey kind of thing. I don't necessarily see anybody who looks like me. I can tell you I went to nationals as a player and as a referee for ball hockey, and I never saw anybody that looked like me. So, but I never let that stop me because I'm always of the idea of somebody has to be first. And I don't let my love of whatever it is that I'm doing be deterred by other people. If I love playing hockey, I'm going to play hockey. If I love reffing ball hockey, I'm going to ref ball hockey, and I'm not going to let others sort of steal my joy, to be honest with you. I love what I do in my involvement in sport, and I don't let other people sort of take away from my enjoyment of it and doing it, because to be honest with you, someone did it for me. So someone encouraged me to keep playing softball, even though I wasn't necessarily with other people that look like me. So I feel it's important that we continue to encourage those who are involved to not give up. Someone's got to be the trailblazer, right? And
Right.
so I say stay with it. I applaud Josh that he stayed with it in spite of some of the challenges. I've known Lee Francis for a long time. I want to give a shout out to him because he actually coached my team when I first started playing for a while. So I'm familiar with him. He's very funny, by the way. He's a very funny coach.
Yeah.
He made it so much fun. But what he said really kind of hurt when he talked about the things that happened. And I say that fight through that hurt. Sometimes I know it's challenging, and I say that with all due respect. but don't let anyone take away what you enjoy doing at all.
Yeah, I thought that was a really important message, you know, for especially when Josh was speaking about that, he never heard of, you know, the Colored Hockey League. Like he heard like snippets of it, but I think for me, the key message was how important it is to share, you know, that history and know that you're a part of something, you know, so that we can continue to, I guess, you know, I guess cultivate the sport within our community. Craig, what about you? What kind of message would you share from the film that you that
I think one
resonated
of
with
the
you?
things that rings true is, and I agree with what Tracy said, in so much as you don't let anybody steal your thunder, and if you're going to go for it, you go for it. But I also think, especially in the younger age, that it's real positive. It's really important for positive role modeling. To be able to see somebody who looks like you, therefore the seed gets planted, that's something that you might do. I think back to myself, you know, I became an RCMP officer at 35, but, you know, when I was 8, 9 years old, my cousin Ricky Smith was the second Black police officer in Halifax. And I saw him come into my household with a uniform on. And whether I knew it or not, the seed was planted then. It was something I could do as well, or think and believe to become. I think the same is for hockey. I think the same is for any sport. And so therefore, I think it's really important that we look at taking so often the African Canadian narrative has been in the margins of history. We've been the afterthought, we've been the add-on, we've been the extra. I think we need to take that and move it to the center page so that it becomes part of the whole Canadian story when we're telling it. It's not the footnote, it's not the extra. When we're telling the history, we tell the history of all. And so for a long time, you know, just to get inside the door of Canada's national pastime and have people actually recognize and acknowledge the fact that Black people have a role to play in shaping hockey has been an uphill battle. I think in this past year, we've seen some doors swing open. We've seen some opportunities like we've never seen before. I think we need to seize the moment. You know, names like Frank Dorrington and Clobie Collins and Art Dorrington, John Mintus and Chuck Maxwell should be part and parcel when we're talking about hockey. And so as Nova Scotians who made their mark in that sport, when kids are learning about hockey, no matter what color they are, those names should be also synonymous with the Lyle Carters and the others that have played as well, so that people see that we've all contributed. And I think that's, you know, really for me what that the video reinforces, the documentary, is the need to make sure that those kind of things continue to happen. Absolutely.
Dean, your thoughts?
I have quite a few of them.
Oh, I know.
That's a great question, Crystal. And I just want to start by saying that, I mean, I have to give credit where credit's due. Hockey Nova Scotia, in its leadership over the last number of years, has really pushed to create diversity and inclusion in the game. They have been very supportive of programs like the one I lead, the Black Youth Ice Hockey Initiative. They've been supportive of the New Canadians program. And for the last 2 years, they have hosted the Indigenous Girls Hockey Program in 3 First Nations communities across the province. So I give credit where credit is due. The challenge for us, and particularly in my work with the Black Youth Ice Hockey Initiative, is how do we get those youth to the next level? That is, how do we get them to transition into minor hockey? Because I'm of the view that having 2 kids of color, for instance, in a dressing room is a lot more comfortable than having a single child of color in the dressing room. I know it. I grew up with it. I know the experience. I've been there. So numbers are important. Education and training is also very important. And when I think about the Icebreaker film, 2 real lines really stick out to me. One is when Josh said that, to his knowledge, he's the only Black player that he knows playing at that level, 1. And 2, the scene with the Nova Scotia Sports Hall of Fame, where they were searching for the history of the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes, and they seen the picture half covered as the only example of that rich history from 1895 to 1930 in this province, more than 12 teams with hundreds and hundreds of games. and large crowds filled arenas, and that's what you get. To the credit of Sport Nova Scotia, Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, they acknowledged it in the end because there was a bit of a dispute there whether they were going to contest the showing of the film. Bruce Ranney, to his credit, said, no, listen, that's a blind spot we have. That's for us to address, and they allowed the film to be shown. So I give credit there, but I agree with Craig. Young people, and this year we have over 40 participants in the Black Youth Ice Hockey Initiative, all African Nova Scotian kids, all looking at us, African Nova Scotian instructors. Tracy spent many of hours on the ice in that program, and they see it and they believe it. And just to hammer that home for our group this year, we had Minister Tony Ince and Amy Walsh, Executive Hockey Nova Scotia, present awards to 10 graduates of the program who came back with their minor hockey jerseys and outfits on to receive honors in front of those new 40 kids. So we're trying to set that seed, like Craig said, if you see it, you can achieve it. And that's what we've been trying to do. And I'm unapologetic. I'll recruit from anywhere as long as I can get kids of color on the ice.
Absolutely. And I think it really speaks to, you know, how important it is for those folks to, for kids especially, to be able to see different people and know that there's some specific people from their communities, because there's so many Black communities across Nova Scotia that we, you know, that tend to, like Craig said, get pushed to the margins. And I think if we see more representation there, then we know that things will get better.
And if Crystal, if I can make one plug.
Yeah, sure.
For everybody that's on tonight, if you go to the the Hockey Canada website, you'll see a new film. It's about 4 minutes long on the Black Youth Ice Hockey program, and it's a wonderful little piece.
Yes, everybody should be watching that because Dean's in it. No, I'm just kidding. What are some other, I guess, system level things that we could be doing to, I guess, prevent racism in the sport? Do you have any thoughts and perspectives on that? I know, you know, we can talk all day about the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, but I think it goes beyond that. Like, I think we're talking about what happens in facilities. We're talking about what happens at the rec leagues. We're talking about, you know, parents and their involvement and those sorts of things. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Craig, I'll start with you.
Well, I think there's no question when the dean talks about education in the broadest sense, really, because if you want to be more diverse, you want to be more inclusive, then one of the ways you do is you recognize the impact. As Tracy said earlier, you know, one of the hardest things with dealing with the parents when you're the coach of young children. Well, I think we need to do the education piece as well that includes that diversity piece for parents, whether it be you registered your child and then you have to go online, or you're in the classroom and somebody's talking to you, but you really need to talk about, you need to be sending a clear message to them as to what you're trying to achieve with diversity inclusion. And secondly, what will and won't be tolerated when it comes, you know, when they're in the stadium and in the stands watching. I also think it means it's about the way in which you package things. Do your brochures, do your videos, do even the things that you have maybe in the arena. Do they depict diversity? The diversity that you say that you want to see has to be depicted by folks as well, so it becomes a more inviting and a more accepting atmosphere for people as they're starting to participate.
For sure. Dean.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree that system change is necessary. A couple of things. One, the game itself is not racist. The game itself is not discriminatory. It's the culture of the game that has gone awry over decades. And I just like to say that there are dozens and dozens of infractions in the rule book for hockey, but very few of those infractions force people to leave the game, like discriminatory racial slurs, like homophobic slurs, like that type of conduct forces people to leave the game. And that's an important point to recognize. That needs to be eliminated. That needs to be addressed. And I think it's important to Craig's point, that's not only just a player, that goes through all levels of the game, and it goes to facilities as well, which is so important. For one quick example is My home arena here in Chebucto is the Lions Arena in Spryfield, just outside Halifax here. And there are rules of conduct, rules of play displayed in every arena across the province you'll recognize. But in our arena, those are posted down by the dressing rooms where no participants or no spectators ever wander, right? So how can you hold someone to account when they're not front and center and visible? So you're on notice now when you enter an arena that your behavior is expected to be honorable, right? So little things like that, I think, are really important. Visuals as well as training and education are critical.
And that someone is going to hold you accountable for stepping out of line. Like that needs to be, I guess, a priority just as much as having those words up there, because words without actions, that doesn't go anywhere, right?
I fully agree, Crystal. And I think many people may not be aware, but every hockey season, officials are given instructions on what we're going to crack down this year. They start off early in, September, October, cracking down, and things settle out, and those sort of issues go away for the most part. But it's not addressed in terms of racism and discrimination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's not even a place on the game sheet to record incidents of racism and discrimination. All you can do is give it a conduct unbecoming penalty. All you can give it is what's recorded in the rule book. So those things need to change. You're right.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts, Tracy?
If I could add a little bit to what Dean's saying, as a ball hockey ref, it's actually right in our rule book that is considered a match penalty. Racist, homophobic, those types of slurs, and the person is automatically suspended, removed from the game and suspended for 5 additional games on the first offense for that. So they come down pretty harsh on it. I also want to give a little bit of a shout out to our league, our Nova Scotia Women's Hockey League, because we actually did write something into our constitution this year about homophobic, racist, sexist type of slurs and the consequences that go along with it. Because not that we've had a real, I got to tell you, for someone who's played hockey for this long, I personally have never been subjected to a racist slur, racist comment. I have heard them directed at, I'm not gonna lie, at our Indigenous brothers and sisters, in particular our Indigenous sisters, hockey players, where I've actually had to call out my own teammates about that. So I had at one point not a lot of friends in the dressing room because I called them out for it. But it's some of the other names that they call, they make comments about weight, looks, just in nasty names, the things that women do. But there's also rules with regards to that in terms of our league. We want to foster respect in the game, so that way we don't get players quitting because they're being called names and that type of thing. And I agree with Dean 100%. It's all about holding people to account. And our league is actually sort of taking it out of the hands of the ref when it comes to that. If there is somebody, if there's a slur or something made, it doesn't matter if the ref heard it or not. We write it up and refer it to the league, and the league does the investigation of it and handles it. Because refs are not necessarily there. We're grown women, so we know how to game the system. We're not going to necessarily say it with the ref within hearing distance, right? So our league has taken a bit of a different approach, but I agree that it needs to be written into the rules like it is in ball hockey, where there's no debate, and it clearly says racist, homophobic, ethnic, that type of thing in the Ball Hockey Canada rule book. And I think maybe hockey needs to adopt the same type of response to it for sure.
Yeah, I really like that idea of, the team members taking responsibility, because they know the rule book, and they know that there are things that just are not welcome in the game. I really like that. Dean, I hope you're taking notes.
Oh, I'm taking lots. Here, you want to see my notes?
On that point though, because of the, I guess, persistent injustices that tend to happen, and we know that we're encouraged to rise above it and try and do our best to conquer those ills either independently or within our community? What sense of hope do we have from your perspective to kind of deal with those particular injustices in the game of hockey that tend to go beyond into, you know, everyday life? Dean, any thoughts?
Thank you, Crystal. I'm encouraged, I'm heartened by the responses we received to our survey that went out across the province. Nearly 1,000 responses, and the majority of those responses recognize that racism discrimination has no place in the game. Many offered wonderful, insightful recommendations on how to address it. So I'm encouraged by the sort of the global perspective that people have regarding that kind of stuff in our game. So I'm encouraged by that. The other thing I would suggest is we had a gentleman by the name of Bobby Sani present at our Diversity and Inclusion Task Force. Bobby Sani is the newest member of Hockey Canada. He a distinct ethnic origin participant and member, and he said some simple stuff. There's no need to go making some of these issues more difficult than they are. Sometimes it's simply good enough to just ask members of underrepresented communities to come participate in this game. So if I were to leave a message with anybody here this evening, it is we all have members of diverse communities in our neighborhoods. Make it a point of asking if they're interested in playing this game of hockey. Make a point of asking if they'd like to participate. Make a point of asking if they'd like to go see a game, because sparking that little interest in a young mind is critical. And once someone I know personally, and I'm sure Tracy knows as well, once somebody falls in love with this game, they will take to this game like a duck to water. So I'm heartful, I'm hopeful. There's good work being done currently.
Yeah, it's definitely the first step in making a game that often seems inaccessible accessible. Yeah. Craig, what are your thoughts?
First of all, I want to take my hats off to you guys as members of that task force for the work that you've undertaken and the changes that you're trying to bring. To hear from Dean, that he is hopeful and happy with and yourself as well with the direction that's being taken, and the steps that are being put in place is amazing. My stepdaughter, Adina, played in the league. With Dean's program. You still have the hockey gear downstairs in the basement here. So I know firsthand, somebody who would have probably never thought about hockey, played soccer, but would have never thought about hockey, but because of her mom, rose to the occasion and took that opportunity to participate in something that for the most part, you wouldn't, you don't see a whole lot of Black women playing. So I know the fruits of the labor. I know the kind of impact that it can have. And so for me, I'm like you guys, I'm hopeful that we'll see more people involved in the game and more of a move forward.
Tracy, any thoughts from you?
I'm hopeful. For anyone did everyone watch the video, or those who watched the video, you saw the baby, the little girl in the video? Mm-hmm. That is actually my cousin's daughter. And she was at the game. And she came in the dressing room and was playing around with my hockey stick and stuff. And now this kid is totally in love with hockey. Dean, they're just waiting for her to get old enough to come to the program. I'm not kidding. They're just waiting for her to get old enough to come to the program because she just loves hockey. And they went out and bought her mini sticks and stuff because she saw me playing. And so now she wants to play. And that's really what we need is some exposure. Is that's why I'm hopeful, is because she saw me play. Now she wants to play. She might bring some friends along. Who knows? But I know that they are interested in playing because they saw me play it. The other thing too that I think is important that I want to just kind of mention here too is that actually coaching in minor hockey is important too. Is to get some diversity in terms of coaching in minor hockey. I know that's what attracted a lot of kids I know to other sports like basketball, football, that type of thing, is that they had a coach that looked like them, and so therefore they wanted to play. So I think it's important that for those of us, and there's a part of me that's really regrets that I don't have time right now to do it because of my job, and it's so far away from my home, so I don't have a whole lot of time. But that is something that I will look at after things settle out this year, about getting back into coaching, because I think it's important that they see, especially for young girls, that they see people like me who's out there playing, because people get excited. You play hockey? What? You play hockey? Yeah, I do. So I'd like to see some girls actually get out there, and some girls of African ancestry get out there and play. And I think I have a role to play in that.
And I
Crystal,
know,
Crystal, could I just add something to what Tracy
Sure.
said? She is true to form, because I coach both my boys' teams, and I take that dressing room very seriously. We have a lot of fun in what we do, but I have that conversation at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year of behaviors expected in my room, language expected in my room, and my teams have not let me down in the last 5-6 years. And Tracy talks about exposure, and I think Reverend Dr. Lewis mentioned it earlier. The Jamaican Olympic Ice Hockey Federation has a hockey program that'll rival any program in this country. And we brought them here 2 years ago for a series of exhibition games in Nova Scotia, and they completely dominated. And the best thing about that weekend was seeing the smiles on people's faces in the auditorium in Dartmouth, their very first hockey game in their life. Loving the weekend, loving the experience. So exposure is, like Tracy says, a very big part of that.
yeah, I love that. I love the opportunity, one, for that cross-cultural exchange, but to be able to see that, hockey's anybody's game. If you really have that opportunity to be able to, really dig deep and engage in it. And I guess that's like my thought process around, especially my goddaughter is in the youth hockey program, and I just about died watching videos of her on her skates, and it made me think about how important it is for us to scale deep some of these initiatives that we have, whether it's Black youth lacrosse or Black youth ice hockey, whatever that program is, and sometimes even though folks might turn their nose at it, it's often important for us to have those specific programs where we're targeting certain groups or demographics or whatever, however we want to. So Dean, I want to ask, is there an opportunity for us to develop a Black female youth ice hockey program so that we can, see more girls play hockey from our community?
There is absolutely opportunity to do that, and nothing would make me happier than to see an all-female program representative, not only our community, Crystal, but members of the 2S LGBT community, persons with disabilities, really open the doors and make this game what it's supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a game, and it's not supposed to be taken as seriously as some people take it in this life. And I would be the first to help. I think a program like that should be operated by girls. I'm a proud advocate of that. I think there's too many men involved in the female game, to be honest, to be frank. And I would wholeheartedly support a program like that. And the good thing about it is our Black Youth Ice Hockey program has been a big success for the last 12 years. It can be scaled, it can be replicated. And we know, and we've had these discussions at the task force table, that we need to set programs because other sports are looking at us. They're looking at us to see what we can do and what type of template we can create that others can follow. And we've already heard from basketball, we've heard from other sports as well that are interested. So yeah, you have my support. I'd be right there.
There's a couple questions in the chat that I want to get to before we begin to wrap up. Elijah says, near the end of the documentary, we see Josh at a hockey camp teaching youth the game of hockey. My question is, how important is it that African Canadian youth, young adults, get involved in mentoring and teaching young children just starting to play the game of hockey?
I don't want to dominate this, but let me just make 2 quick points. So that is the Black Youth Ice Hockey Initiative that Josh came out and spent some time with us. Incredibly important. And one of the hallmarks of our program is that we ask graduates to come back and mentor. And both my boys come with me every Saturday. When I first started with the program, I dragged them, but now they come willingly, they volunteer, they enjoy, they're learning something very important aside from volunteering, and it's important. But a lot of graduates come back, whether it be for 2-3 weeks or a whole year, and I think it's incredibly important that you keep that momentum going.
Thank you. Craig, what do you think is missing in terms of, what needs to be done to, continue to advocate for or promote participation in hockey?
Well, I think one, things like tonight and word of mouth. I mean, nothing nothing spreads quicker than somebody else having a good story to tell. And I think that, the events like this evening give people the opportunity to hear a little bit more, to learn a little bit more, to recognize the strides that folks like yourself and Dean and Tracy are trying to make, things in inroads. And I think that helps. The piece Dean just mentioned with regard to giving back, that's also one of those pieces as well that helps. I think back to my younger siblings' days of the community YMCA, where the motto was each one teach one. And so, as those young people go through the program, Dean, and come back, that's exactly what they're doing. And so you take that and you just pay that forward and continue to pay it forward so that more people have the opportunity. But it's really about getting the word out there. You can't have enough documentaries and newspaper clippings and articles that talk about hockey, hockey from the standpoint of African Canadian, but male and female. I mean, I think of, for a long time, I can tell you, I was completely oblivious to the fact of who Angela James was, until I got involved and I see Tracy's mouth falling open, until I got involved in doing some history in hockey and recognizing that she's basically called the Wayne Gretzky of women's hockey. Before Wickenheiser and all those others, she was an international star when it came to women's hockey. She's Black, who would have known? It's about telling those stories and about, so young women, young girls can see somebody who looks like them, who was playing at the elite level, who was an MVP and who's won world championships, that they start to think about the fact, wow, I can aspire to that. So for me, it's really always about the education piece, making sure people know, making sure that not just in the game itself, but even in school systems, that people know who these heroes were, and not just in February, because, we need to be doing this stuff 12 months of the year, not just one. And so if we make it part and parcel of what people are learning when they're learning sport, whether it be in recreation in school, and phys ed, there are a number of different ways in which you can teach a class and also teach about whose shoulders people stood on and who were the ones that blazed trails. I think all of that becomes a collective in making change.
Well, I'll just put a plug out there because I've got a couple book ideas, and I figured that you might mentor me in writing up some books, because I did my rec degree at Dow, and one of the things that was missing was the story of my community, or just hearing other perspectives of what recreation means and how it's experienced in different ethnic communities. So Craig, you and I have to sit down and have some conversations. We might be rewriting some textbooks or just writing some new ones. So just so you know, I got my eye on you. Tracy, I'll bring you to the last point before we get into some action-oriented work here with the panel and with our participants. But I want to again go back to that whole gender equity piece and how important it is for not only women to be at the forefront of those conversations, but men too. So what are you expecting from men when it comes to the sport of hockey in terms of reaching gender equity?
That's a really good question. I agree with Dean when I say that in our case, women should be running women's hockey. That's not to disrespect what men have done, because I do think that perhaps with some of the coaching and officiating and things, because there may not be a whole ton of women with that high level experience, that they do need to be mentored so that they can then mentor others. But I do think that women should be the ones that are leading women's hockey, 100%. They understand the game better. And I got to tell you too, women athletes are different than male athletes. I mean, I'm not being sexist. It's just the way it is. Women are different when it comes to some of the ways that they perceive their coaches and all that kind of thing. It's different. If you don't ask Dean, no, ask Lee. Dean, ask Lee, because it is different. And because for someone who has coached women in different sports, I got to tell you, they don't take the yelling at them like men do. They don't. If you tear them down, you got to build them right back up within the next few minutes, or else I think a little bit you might lose them a little bit. It is different. So I think it's really important that women start to take the lead and get that experience so that they can take the lead. I almost think, and I feel, again, I feel guilty that I'm not involved this year. I just don't have the time. But I do like to get involved and be the one to sort of start to be a trailblazer in terms of that other aspect of it, because it's not so much the playing, it's the other parts of it too, where you could be a leader, right? You don't necessarily have to be a player to be a leader in terms of the development of women's hockey, and in particular, even to get young African Nova Scotian or Black females involved. You don't have to be an all-star or an elite player to get others involved in playing. So I do think it's important that we sort of start to recruit and encourage women to take more of that leadership role. And I really do think that they have, because our league used to be, Nova Scotia Women's Hockey League used to be run by men. When women started running it, it ran a lot better. Not to disrespect what the men did, but the women understood what women are like.
So they just need to step back and let women handle it.
Absolutely, 100%.
There was another question in there, and by the way, Tracy, Lana agrees with you, it's different. There was a question in the chat though around the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame adding to the display on the league. Did they, were there any changes after the documentary was made? Dean, do you know around that? And if not, Craig, does the Black Cultural Center have a plan to create a sport installation for the museum? So Dean, you answer first and then Craig.
Well, yes. Ironically, shortly after the National Film Board film aired, the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame left their current premises, and their intention is to relocate to a new building. And I think that was part and parcel the reason why the board leadership of the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame said, okay, this gives us some space to think about this blind spot that we have. So I don't know what they have in store for doing better in that area and recognizing the contributions of the Colored Hockey League of the Maritime. So that's a wait and see situation. But I'm fairly confident that Bruce Rennie will not fail to address it. I think some effort will be put into addressing that. And I know Craig will be able to speak to this quite well, but I also sit on the Black Ice Hockey and Sports Hall of Fame Society. Craig was there on the ground level for that society. And we began a small exhibit at the Black Cultural Center. Craig can speak to this. But recently we've been having meetings with the Black Cultural Center in an attempt to revitalize the exhibit that's currently there. We came into some funding this past year because the appetite is there for contributing to Black issues like hockey and its history. So I'll let Craig take over from there.
Sure.
Awesome.
Both. I'll speak first to, you're right. The Nova Scotia Sports Hall of Fame actually ended up moving from their present location, not of their own fruition, but they have, and nonetheless, it creates the opportunity. I too have been meeting and speaking with Bruce, and I know that, you know, their plan is to, as they move forward, is to bring even more light to African Nova Scotian achievement in sport, hockey being included. Black Cultural Center, you're right, Dean. We've been partners with the Black Ice Hockey and Sports Hall of Fame since its inception, and have housed the exhibit there. COVID has really, as we know, has thrown everything kind of into a tailspin where we've had to move things around and haven't been able to allow people to be up on the second floor with that display. And one of our other displays is just solely because of some of the COVID restrictions. But the plan is to have a more robust and a larger and a more interactive sporting display there. That will speak to the long history that we have here in Nova Scotia when it comes to sporting heroes. And so as we move forward in the coming months and years, and I don't think Dean could have put it any better with the fact that the appetite seemed to be there right now on a lot of fronts to expand and move. And it's always been my hope and dream as board chair and president for us to expand the center. And so in doing so, it also would give us the opportunity to go even further with the sports display and give a fitting recognition to those trailblazers in a number of sports here within our province.
Awesome. Another couple questions that came in. Were there other Black hockey leagues in Canada in addition to Nova Scotia?
I can't say a whole lot on that other than recognize the fact that I know that when we look at the prairies, there were a number of Black teams and Black hockey leagues. I mean, a baseball, I would assume probably the same somewhat in hockey, just given the locales of where communities were. And the only thing I would think might be a little bit of a drawback, in some cases, those communities weren't as big as Nova Scotia, you know, and didn't have the geographic space to allow them to move around. But, you know, if you look at the Amber Valley and Maidstone and Judkins and those places in Saskatchewan and Alberta, you know, life on the prairies was not an easy one, and just trying to etch out a living was one thing. But I know that they're, especially connecting now with places like the Saskatchewan African Canadian Heritage Museum, that it talks about the experiences of Black people in the prairies. And so, yes, there were some sports heroes there, but not to my knowledge was there a full league like we would have had here back in the Maritimes.
Yeah, we definitely had the communities to be able to see a number of teams develop in the province. I'm going to invite Mary back. Dean, you were going to say something?
I was just going to make reference. I see a question from Mark Adams there. Soul on Ice documentary 2015 is another documentary, and that is true. Director Kwame Mason came to Halifax to do some research on the Colored Hockey League for that film, and there are some segments in that film that show the commemorative memorial game that we hold every year in honor of that league, donning the old jerseys and whatnot. And Tracy's played in a number of those games. Craig's been at a bunch of those games as well. And so I appreciate that comment from Mark.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. Crystal, thank you for beautifully facilitating. I know that it is a gift to be able to do that. So thank you. And I want to ask you, what brings you hope? You have been embedded in this work for a long time, and your role as Executive Director in Recreation Nova Scotia, and would love for you to share what brings you hope.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I how do I say it? Taking on this role has been enlightening for me because for those of you who don't know recreation or the recreation sector, you're really missing out on understanding a group of people who are so passionate about community development. Craig knows he's married to someone who's involved in recreation, but I like to call it heart work, because every time we do something, it's about investing in the community and making sure that folks are okay. And what I've noticed over the last number of years with being with recreation, what gives me hope is that the sector is really wanting to see change. They really want folks to be able to, like all people in Nova Scotia, to be able to participate in recreation and really experience the benefits that we all know to exist when you're participating, social, emotional, physical, whatever. And our sector is so poised to engage in those tough conversations around equity and inclusion and racism and stuff like that. We're a brave bunch of people, and that's what's given me hope, is the bravery that the sector is showing in confronting these particular challenges, these inequities that folks might experience. So yeah, thanks for asking that. Hope that was the answer you were looking for, Professor.
Well said. Well, Rachel Bedingfield just said, well said, and I agree. And I think that bravery is something that we would like to end on, the students and I, and that is to ask the people who have been listening, our community of listeners, who are a combination of students and educators, coaches, players, sports enthusiasts, to not just listen, but to take action. So something I've heard all of you, all of our amazing panelists say over and over are things that should be done and could be done and things that we can do. And so I ask our beautiful community of listeners to bravely state, perhaps even write in the chat, or write if you don't want to post it publicly, to write it down, because if we write things down, we are more likely to actualize it. And action that you can take, that you'd be willing to take around equity in sport, in hockey or sport in general, in recreation, something that you can do, something that you heard tonight that you're like, oh, I can invite a friend to the hockey rink. I can ask my hockey league that my kids are part of to share with me their equity stance. So please be brave and write down an action, if not for yourself, but also for the panelists to say thank you for their time this evening. So maybe give a moment or two, and if any of the panelists have anything to add to that, please do while people are thinking and writing.
I would just add a very brief comment that, Mary, I wholeheartedly support a plea to a wonderful community like this to really reach out and make that just singular effort to encourage others to participate, particularly those from historically underrepresented communities, not only in hockey, but in sport generally. Sport is such a rewarding lifetime experience that nobody should be deprived of it, in my view. And we can all make one effort to do that. And I would highly recommend people reach out.
I could echo what Dean is saying a little bit. I work in the education field, and one of the big things that they stress right now, not only for our students, but for the staff, is wellness. And that involves recreation. And it is a big push on, especially with COVID, and how we recognize that people sometimes are not well. And we want to put a push on people being well. So definitely encourage people to get involved in recreation. It does not have to be hockey. Just something, just do something, because honestly, for me, hockey is my mental health, to be honest with you, because it's that mindless activity I do where I just go, I have fun, and I don't think about anything else. So that's what does it for me. But if it does it for somebody else, another sport or another activity, wellness is stressed so much in terms of the education system. Kids can't learn if they're not well. So we put a big push on it in education, and I think it's important that adults actually model that for the kids that they're working with or the kids that they're around.
Thank you, Tracy. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I would just agree with what Tracy said, just to closing, just that she's right. Folks, mental wellness and mental well-being is all wrapped up in what you do and how you do it in recreation, and no matter what form it takes, is something that's positive for all of us. And so, we do need to encourage, especially our youth, to get out more, to participate more. It's we in that, when that large social media era that we're in now, where everybody just wants to be sitting in front of something. Well, we need to encourage them to do what we did a generation ago, which was we're out of the house more than we were in the house, and just doing and being active. And so I can't echo that enough.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I see a few brave commitments in the chat, which I really appreciate. For the students that are going to be in my class tomorrow, I will also be asking you this question again. And we'll have a discussion about it. And for those community members, as Dean so generously offered, and I will too, to reach out and let's keep this conversation going. I'd like to just hand it over to Chris, one of the organizers this evening, to do a final thank you, but many thanks to this panel.
Guys, this was great. This all started as a little school project for Mary's class, and it was just so cool to see it blow up so quickly and have people with such impressive resumes join us tonight. So along with my fellow organizers and classmates Elijah and Mark, we want to thank Dean Smith, Tracy Mulder, Craig Smith, and Crystal Watson for sharing their knowledge and experiences with us tonight. Also, thank you, Crystal, for moderating the discussion. I had to do it at first, and I don't know if I could have done it as well as you. So thank you very much. And also we want to thank Rachel Bedingfield in the Town of Kentville, Marjorie Lewis and the PART, and Professor Mary Sweetman and the whole Department of Community Development. Lastly, we want to thank you, the viewers. We all knew our classmates were coming, and it just meant a lot. I looked in the participants and saw people, coaches and other faculties, and even some family friends were in there, which was awesome to see and show their support. I think this discussion was super important. I expressed it in my reflection to Mary. This is definitely an issue that has come a long way, but still needs lots of work for sure. And let's continue to listen, learn, share, and act beyond February, Nova Scotia's African Heritage Month. And on behalf of all of us, thank you. And I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks all. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Mr. and Dean, I'd love to talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
I'll ask Mary for the contacts.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I think I can benefit from your experience.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Be happy to
Thank
put you in
you.
touch.
Mary, do you want us to stay, or do you want to talk, or do we?
Yeah, why don't you stay for a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if they left already. I hope not.
Okay, bye. Congrats. I'm so excited.
Thanks so much, Margie, for coming.
How many people did you say registered eventually?
There were 70, and then at the peak, we had 50 online.
That is fantastic.
It's pretty good.
Congratulations. Oh,
Thanks,
great.
Margie.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Mary, thank you so much to you and your class. You did a fantastic job.
Oh my
Crystal.
gosh, I've learned so much.
I know. So proud to be a part of that. Thanks to all of you folks. Great work.
Thank you for coming.
Rachel.
Take care.
Thanks, Rachel.
Sorry I can't be at the debrief tomorrow.
That's okay. We'll do it some other time, maybe with Crystal.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to. Yeah, for sure. Okay, bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Holy Lord.
So those two are my parents that are on.
Oh,
And I'm not sure who this other one is, but we can chat. They probably just don't know how to exit if you're their parents. So what did you think?
I thought it went great. That was awesome.
Things are good now.
I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, Chris